Intuition and the other voices. The way back to clarity. Forward. The silent knowing, humanity's forgotten gift. There was once a time when man walked in quiet communion with the light. His heart was still, and his spirit clear. He did not need words to understand, for truth flowed through him as sunlight through a crystal. In that time, intuition, the living bridge between the spirit of man and the will of God, was his natural compass. Through it, he knew what was right, what was pure, what was lawful. But as mankind turned outward, intoxicated by the works of his own hands and the noise of his restless mind, the silent knowing withdrew into the depths of his being. The divine spark in man, his intuitive perception, did not die, but it became veiled beneath layers of thought, emotion, and desire. The clamor of these lesser voices grew so loud that man mistook them for truth. And so began the age of confusion, where the inward ear no longer recognized the sound of the living word. This book is a light set upon that path of return, a guide for the earnest seeker who feels within himself a call he cannot define. It is a call from the Spirit to awaken once more, to separate the pure voice from the noise, to distinguish the eternal knowing of the Spirit from the fleeting impulses of the flesh. Through the light of the Grail Message, this work shall clarify the difference between intuition and its imitators, exposing how emotion, thought, and imagination usurp the throne of spiritual perception. It is not an academic exercise, but a living correction, a restoration of the forgotten gift that once made man noble. Let the reader approach in humility, for only the humble can hear. And may he rediscover within himself that still, small voice which speaks not from the brain, but from the Spirit that is of God. Preface. The lost sense, the fall of inner clarity. The greatest tragedy in man's evolution is not the loss of knowledge, but the loss of inner clarity. He built cities, invented machines, and explored the stars, yet lost the key to his own being. What was once an open channel between the Creator and his creation has been clogged by the debris of human thinking and emotional excess. Man's intellect, meant to serve as a tool, has become his tyrant. It interprets everything according to its own narrow logic, denying what it cannot grasp. Feelings, once a gentle mist surrounding the flame of intuition, have become storms of passion and sentimentality, drowning the quiet voice within. Instinct, meant to preserve the physical vessel, often masquerades as inner guidance. And imagination, when uncontrolled, fabricates illusions so dazzling that the soul mistakes them for revelation. Thus man lives surrounded by noise, both within and without. He prays but cannot hear, he seeks but cannot find. His confusion deepens, for he no longer distinguishes the voice of the Spirit from the echo of his own desires. Yet the Spirit has not ceased to speak. The word still streams from the source, pure and living. It is man's receiver that is damaged, not the transmission. And this damage arose through disobedience to the laws of creation, through living contrary to the rhythm of light. This book therefore comes not to bring something new, but to awaken what has long slept. It reminds man of the law of spiritual perception, that only purity can perceive purity. It calls him to silence his mind, to purify his emotions, and to let the Spirit rise once more to its rightful place. For only when the Spirit reigns, does man truly live as man. Introduction. The hidden compass, the mystery of inner guidance. Deep within every human being lies a compass not made by man. It is the unerring sense that points toward truth and away from falsehood, quietly, steadfastly, beyond thought and reasoning. This is intuition, the organ of the Spirit. It does not think, it knows. It does not argue, it perceives. But this inner compass is hidden beneath veils, veils woven from centuries of distortion. It is like a lamp buried under soil, still burning, but unseen. Its light cannot guide a man who no longer recognizes its glow. To find this compass again, man must first understand what it is not. It is not emotion, for emotion is transient and bound to the body. It is not thought, for thought is born of the brain and limited to earthly things. It is not imagination, for imagination can fabricate both truth and falsehood. Nor is it instinct, for instinct is an automatic reaction of the flesh, not a conscious perception of the Spirit. Intuition arises from the spiritual core of man, the eternal essence that comes from the spiritual realm, the region nearest to paradise. It connects man directly to the will of God. When man lives in purity, free of deceit, vanity, and selfish desire, his intuition shines forth clearly, guiding him effortlessly in harmony with the divine laws. But when impurity clouds his inner sight, when passion, pride, fear, or intellectual arrogance take root, this connection is obscured. The voice of intuition becomes faint, and man begins to follow the counterfeit voices that mimic it. Thus, the purpose of this book is to help the seeker discern the true from the false, to hear once again the clear tone of the Spirit amid the noise of earthly voices. For only through obedience to the laws of creation can the inner compass be restored to function. And only through purity can man perceive the will of God once more. Chapter 1. The Lost Voice, How the Spirit Fell Silent. The fall of mankind was not a single event, but a gradual dimming of spiritual awareness. Once, man perceived life through his spirit, now, he perceives it through his intellect. The shift from spiritual intuition to rational thought marked the beginning of his estrangement from God. The spirit of man, originating from the spiritual realm, was designed to be guided by the living will through intuition. Thought and reason were meant to assist in expressing this guidance on earth. But over ages, man reversed this order, the servant became the master. The intellect, cold and analytical, usurped the throne of the spirit. As intellect expanded, the inner voice grew quiet. The natural link between man and the radiant heights weakened. No longer able to perceive the luminous threads of the laws of creation, man began to construct artificial systems of belief and knowledge. Religion became dogma, science became arrogance, and art became self-worship. The voice of intuition, drowned by the clamor of human invention, fell silent within. This silence is not the peace of spirit, but the stillness of death. For when the spirit no longer leads, man becomes like a tree cut from its roots, still standing for a time, but doomed to decay. Yet even now, deep within, the voice still whispers. It waits for man to quiet his restless mind and cleanse his inner world. Only when thought bows again before the spirit, and emotion becomes pure and calm, can the true voice be heard once more. Chapter 2. The Many Voices, Thought, Emotion, Instinct, and Imagination. Within man resound many voices, but only one speaks truth. To recognize it, we must learn to distinguish the others. Thought is the voice of the intellect. It operates in forms and logic, drawing from memory and sensory input. It is bound to time and matter. It analyzes but cannot perceive essence. Thought is a useful servant in worldly affairs, but a poor guide in spiritual ones, for it cannot grasp what lies beyond form. Emotion arises from the soul's astral cloak. It vibrates with attraction and repulsion, love, anger, joy, fear, but it is reactive, not originating from the spirit. It often imitates spiritual warmth but lacks its clarity. Emotional enthusiasm may feel like inspiration, but it burns fast and leaves confusion behind. True intuition, in contrast, is calm, firm, and luminous. Instinct belongs to the body, not the spirit. It ensures survival, guiding behavior necessary for preservation of life. When purified and aligned, it harmonizes with intuition. But when dominant, it drags the spirit downward, making man behave like the beasts. Imagination is a bridge between thought and spirit. When disciplined, it can shape forms for higher impressions. But when uncontrolled, it produces phantoms, images mistaken for revelation. Many false prophets and mystics fell here, confusing their own projections for divine guidance. Thus, the path to clarity begins with discrimination, the ability to recognize what speaks within us. The intuitive voice is never loud. It is steady, simple, direct. It speaks once, quietly, with authority that brings peace. All other voices argue, persuade, or excite. To follow intuition, one must learn silence, not only outwardly, but inwardly. Only in stillness can the eternal voice be heard. Chapter 3. The Counterfeit Light, When Emotion Imitates Revelation. Among all the false voices, Emotion is the most deceptive, for it glows with warmth and intensity that the unawakened spirit mistakes for divine inspiration. This confusion has filled the world with false teachers, misguided zeal, and movements born not from the light, but from human passion. Emotion is a product of the soul's lower nature. It reflects personal wishes, longings, and fears. When an emotional wave rises, it can mimic the fire of the spirit, but it burns with smoke, not light. True spiritual fire burns clear and steady, without agitation or frenzy. Throughout history, mankind has repeatedly fallen for this counterfeit light. Religious revivals, ecstatic visions, and sentimental worship have often been celebrated as works of the spirit, when in truth, they were eruptions of emotion. This is why so much confusion reigns. Men mistake warmth for truth, feeling for knowing, excitement for enlightenment. But intuition is not excitement, it is recognition. It perceives truth instantly and serenely, like the quiet dawn revealing the landscape. It does not need to be stirred, it simply is. To separate true intuition from emotional illusion, man must purify his inner world. He must cease to seek sensations and learn instead to be still. For only when the sea of emotion becomes calm can the reflection of light appear upon its surface. And when that light shines again within, man will know the difference between what arises from the spirit and what arises from the soul's unrest. Then shall he walk again in the clarity of truth, guided not by noise or feeling, but by the living perception of the spirit. Chapter 4. The Tyranny of the Intellect, Reason Without Light. Man built a tower of thought and named it wisdom. From it he surveyed the world and declared himself master of all things seen. Yet the higher he built, the farther he drifted from the quiet meadow where truth first spoke to his heart. The intellect, bright, sharp, restless, became his new god, and in its cold light he sought to explain even the mysteries of heaven. But intellect is a tool, not a sun. It illuminates what the senses provide, yet it cannot create light of its own. It is like the moon, reflecting what it has borrowed. When man enthrones it above the spirit, he turns reflection into rule, logic into law, and knowledge into a prison. He begins to reason about love rather than live it, to analyze faith rather than experience it. He becomes clever without wisdom, quick without depth. The intellect is lawful when it serves the spirit, yet tyrannical when it seeks to lead. For it thrives on comparison, separation, and dominance, dividing what in truth belongs together. It dissects the flower to understand its fragrance, forgetting that the scent dies when the petals are torn apart. The fall of humanity into confusion began when thought ceased to listen to the quiet voice within. What was meant to be a servant became a ruler, what was meant to obey began to command. And so the world today, though rich in invention, is poor in understanding. Knowledge multiplies, yet clarity diminishes. Progress ascends outwardly, but the inner world lies in ruins. The way back is not the destruction of the intellect, but its reordering, its return to service beneath the living spirit. Only when thought bows to intuition does it regain balance. For reason alone can describe the path, but only the inner light can walk it. Chapter 5. The Inner Flame, What Intuition Truly Is. There is in every human being a silent flame, untouched by the storms of emotion and unshadowed by thought. It does not argue, nor does it persuade, it simply knows. This is intuition, the direct perception of truth through the spirit, without the need for reasoning or proof. Intuition is not a thought, yet it can give birth to thoughts. It is not a feeling, yet it can awaken the purest feelings. It is the voice of the spirit, the living essence within man that perceives the language of creation. In the moments when man grows still, when fear and desire fall silent, this flame flickers into awareness, bringing with it a certainty no argument can overthrow. Unlike intellect, intuition does not labor. It does not build with fragments but beholds the whole. It does not conclude, it recognizes. Its knowing is instantaneous, like light revealing what already is. For truth is not discovered, it is seen when the eyes of the spirit open. Intuition speaks in simplicity, yet its depth is endless. It may warn, comfort, or command, but always in harmony with the quiet majesty of the divine order. Those who live by it walk in rhythm with life itself. They act not from calculation but from clarity, not from impulse but from harmony with the living law. But intuition can only guide where purity reigns. It is drowned by the noise of passions, veiled by pride, and distorted by selfish desires. To hear it clearly, the soul must become still and honest, free from pretense and open to truth even when it wounds. The rediscovery of intuition is the rebirth of man's true sight. It is the return of the king within, long exiled by the tyranny of thought. Chapter 6. The Spirit Within, the Seat of True Perception. Beyond the tides of emotion and the echo of thought lies the sanctuary of the spirit, the true self of man. Here, in the depth of his being, dwells the seat of perception. It is not located in the brain, nor can it be found through introspection alone. It awakens when man's inner life turns upward in reverence, when the heart longs for truth more than comfort. The spirit is the link between man and the eternal. It is the mirror through which the divine will reflects into creation. Every genuine intuition arises from this center, every true inspiration flows through it. The clearer and purer the mirror, the brighter the reflection. When the spirit is clouded by selfishness, false images appear, projections mistaken for guidance. To live from the spirit is to live from the eternal. It means to anchor one's being not in fleeting sensations or changing opinions, but in the unchanging harmony of divine order. The spirit does not need instruction to recognize what is true, it knows truth because it lives in truth. When the intellect humbly listens to the spirit, man becomes whole again. His thoughts align with the inner law, his words carry light. But when he ignores this inner seat of perception, he loses the living connection and begins to wander through illusions. Then the temple within, meant to be radiant, grows dim with the smoke of confusion. Therefore, to find truth, man must not seek outwardly, but inwardly, through purification, through stillness, through surrender to the higher will that speaks within his spirit. Chapter 7. The Veils of the Soul, How Confusion is Born Within. Why has mankind, once pure in perception, fallen into such noise and blindness? It is because the soul has wrapped itself in veils of its own making, layers of pride, fear, desire, and false knowledge. Each veil thickens as man prefers comfort over truth, opinion over recognition, and noise over silence. The first veil is self-importance, the illusion that one's own thoughts define reality. The second is fear, which clings to the familiar even when the familiar enslaves. The third is desire, which twists perception to favor what pleases rather than what is right. And the last is false teaching, which crowns these veils with authority and calls darkness light. Thus, confusion is not imposed from outside, it is generated from within. The noise that covers intuition is man's own echo chamber of restless thought and feeling. Every time he reacts without reflection, judges without clarity, or seeks power instead of understanding, the veil thickens. But these veils are not eternal. They can be lifted through honesty and humility. For the spirit longs for truth, and truth has the power to dissolve all untruth. The more one lives in sincerity, the thinner the veils become until light breaks through once more. Purity, therefore, is not the denial of the world, but the alignment with what is real within it. It is the state of transparency through which the light of the spirit can shine unobstructed. Chapter 8. The Law of Resonance, How the Spirit Receives Truth. Everything in creation vibrates according to its nature. What is pure is drawn to what is pure, what is dark resonates with darkness. This law of resonance governs all perception, for man can only recognize what harmonizes with his inner state. When the spirit is uplifted, filled with longing for the good and true, it opens itself to streams of light. Inspirations, intuitions, and guidance reach it naturally, not through effort but through affinity. But when the soul is burdened with selfish motives, it can only attract that which matches its vibration, confusion, fear, and false impressions. This law explains why truth cannot be forced upon anyone. It must find resonance within the listener. Words of light remain meaningless to those who cherish darkness, yet a whisper of truth can awaken one whose heart already beats toward the light. To receive truth clearly, Man must therefore become true. He must purify his will, align his desires with the good, and lift his gaze beyond himself. Then, like a finely tuned instrument, his spirit will begin to vibrate with the living harmony of creation. The law of resonance is also the law of prayer. For every true prayer is a vibration sent upward, seeking its corresponding light. And every true answer is the descent of that same light through the open spirit of man. Chapter 9. The whisper of the lower nature, the inner noise of desire. There is yet another voice within man, a whisper that often drowns the voice of intuition. It is the murmur of the lower nature, born of self-will, vanity, and craving. It mimics the tone of inner guidance, promising pleasure, security, or recognition, but its fruits are always unrest. This voice speaks loudly when the spirit grows weak. It urges haste where patience is needed, fear where faith should stand, indulgence where restraint would save. It cloaks itself in noble words, even in the name of righteousness, but its counsel leads to bondage, not freedom. The inner noise of desire is the greatest obstacle to intuition. It drives man into constant movement, into 1,000 thoughts and impulses that leave no room for quiet recognition. The world today thrives on this noise, amplifying it through opinion, entertainment, and endless information, until the still flame of the spirit becomes almost imperceptible. But the whisper of the lower nature can be overcome, not by suppression, but by transformation. Each time man chooses truth over comfort, duty over self-interest, silence over argument, the lower voice weakens. In time, the clear, calm certainty of intuition shines through again. To follow the voice of the spirit requires vigilance, humility, and purity. But once discerned, it becomes unmistakable, a note of peace that no storm can imitate. Chapter 10. The mirage of inspiration, mediums, mystics, and misguided voices. Not every light that glimmers in the night sky is the star of truth. Many are reflections upon the mist, dancing forms born of vapor and longing. So too it is with the voices that men call inspiration. They echo through minds and hearts, stirring wonder, but few among them descend from the pure heights where the divine will shines. From ancient times, mankind has sought to pierce the veil between worlds. In temples, caves, and sanctuaries, seekers opened themselves to unseen realms. Yet the openness that is not governed by purity becomes vulnerability. The gate of the soul, when unguarded by the will in the light, admits not only truth but also shadow. Thus arose the swarm of mediums, trance speakers, and mystics who mistake the play of astral forces for revelation. Every word that truly comes from the luminous heights bears peace, clarity, and order. It uplifts, never flatters, it strengthens, never intoxicates. The counterfeit inspiration, by contrast, awakens excitement and self-importance, weaving emotion into illusion. It promises power, secret knowledge, or divine approval, yet its fruits are restlessness and confusion. The way back to discernment lies not in rejecting the unseen, but in sanctifying the approach. The spirit must be anchored in purity, the will turned steadfastly toward the good. Then the light descends lawfully, without trance or frenzy, and intuition becomes the channel through which the true word resounds. For the voice of God never shouts, it speaks in the clarity of ordered calm. Chapter 11. The shadow of tradition, when teachings replace experience. Truth is living, it cannot be bound in formulas. Yet men, fearing the freedom of the spirit, have wrapped the living flame in layers of doctrine. They have built walls of tradition around the well of life, until the water could scarcely reach the thirsting soul. Thus, what began as revelation became repetition, and what was once direct experience became inherited opinion. The shadow of tradition falls where the light of individual recognition has grown dim. In place of the inward certainty born of intuition, mankind clings to the authority of names, texts, and institutions. The sayings of awakened men are turned into rigid creeds. The personal path of discovery becomes a map traced in ink and declared sacred. But no generation can live by the breath of another. Each soul must rediscover truth in the living present. The letter may guide, yet it must never replace the flame. For words that were once alive with spirit become idols when worshipped without renewal. The true purpose of all teaching is to awaken recognition, not to imprison it. When the teaching becomes a substitute for the inner hearing, the chain of error continues. The remedy lies in the return to simplicity, in testing every word, however venerable, by the quiet light of the Spirit within. What resonates with that light will live, what does not must be let go, even if it bears the marks of ancient authority. Chapter 12. The Still Heart, the prerequisite for hearing the Spirit. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of order. When the waves of emotion and thought are stilled, the depths of the soul become clear like a quiet lake. In that reflection, the heavens can be seen. The still heart is thus the gateway to the voice of the Spirit. As long as the soul trembles with anxiety, ambition, or desire, the divine whisper cannot be perceived. The noise of striving creates interference, distorting the fine vibration through which intuition speaks. Therefore, the first step toward clarity is inner peace, not the peace of indifference, but of trustful surrender to the law of God. To still the heart does not mean to suppress feeling, but to purify it. When love ceases to demand and begins to serve, when thought ceases to argue and begins to listen, the current of light finds passage once more. The Spirit then perceives with effortless certainty, and what was confusion becomes order. This stillness is no passive sleep, it is alert receptivity, the watchfulness of one whose lamp burns through the night, awaiting the arrival of the bridegroom. Only such a heart can hear the wordless speech of the light. Chapter 13. The Purified Will, the Gate of True Intuition. The will is the hand of the Spirit. Whatever it grasps, it shapes, whatever it releases, it allows to live. But through impurity, man's will became entangled in the lower spheres of desire, shaping not light but shadow. Only when the will is purified does intuition find a clear channel through which to flow. Purification of the will begins with self-knowledge. The seeker must see the motives that hide behind his actions, pride disguised as zeal, fear masked as prudence, craving dressed as devotion. Each recognition is a cleansing, for truth alone can dissolve the false. Gradually the will, once scattered among countless selfish aims, becomes unified in the one longing, to serve the will of God. Then intuition no longer flickers uncertainly. It shines as a steady flame, fed by obedience and faithfulness. The purified will does not seek experiences, it seeks rightness. It no longer asks, what pleases me? But, what is true? And in that shift, the gate of inner hearing opens fully. Through such a will, the divine can act. For the Spirit of truth requires instruments free of distortion, and these are found only among those whose will has become transparent like crystal before the sun. Chapter 14. The Light of Purity, the Spiritual Hygiene of the Inner Life. As the body requires cleanliness to remain healthy, so the spirit demands purity to remain luminous. Every impure thought, every indulgent feeling, clouds the fine structure through which light must pass. Yet many souls, unaware of this law, live inwardly surrounded by the smoke of their own passions and wonder why they cannot perceive clearly. Purity is more than moral restraint, it is harmony with the order of creation. It means to think truthfully, feel nobly, and will rightly. It is the fragrance of an inner alignment with the divine rhythm. In the pure, intuition flows naturally, for nothing obstructs the movement of the light. To cultivate purity, one must guard the inner atmosphere as carefully as a sanctuary. What one reads, hears, contemplates, and desires, all these are seeds that either enrich or poison the soil of the soul. The company one keeps, the words one speaks, the images one entertains, each contributes to the vibration in which the spirit dwells. Spiritual hygiene is therefore vigilance, not asceticism. The soul that keeps itself pure need not retreat from life, it sanctifies life by the clarity of its presence. Where such a one stands, confusion fades, for the light itself becomes visible through him. Chapter 15. The Law of Obedience, Walking in the Rhythm of the Light. Freedom is found not in defiance, but in harmony. To obey the divine law is to move as the stars move, freely, yet within an unbreakable order. Obedience is not submission to an external will, but attunement to the eternal current that sustains all being. Every intuition, every true insight, carries with it a call to obedience. The recognition of truth is incomplete until it is lived. To know what is right and not to act is to close the channel through which further light might come. For light increases only in motion, revelation grows through application. The law of obedience is the law of resonance in action. When the will responds to the vibration of the good, it sets in motion forces that draw higher strength. When it resists, the flow is interrupted, and darkness returns. Thus, obedience is creative, it is cooperation with the divine purpose. The obedient spirit is not enslaved, it is empowered. In aligning with the rhythm of the light, man becomes a conscious instrument of the eternal will. His words carry weight, his deeds radiate peace, and his life becomes prayer in motion. Such a one no longer asks for signs or proofs. He knows, and he does. In him the lost harmony of heaven and earth begins to resound once more, the rhythm of the light that was, is, and shall forever be. Chapter 16. The Clear Stream, Intuition in Everyday Life. Truth is not reserved for temples and meditation halls. It flows through the very dust of daily life, in the marketplace, in the home, in the quiet decisions of the hour. The spirit that listens can hear its murmur beneath every circumstance, as a clear stream beneath fallen leaves. Intuition, when rightly awakened, does not withdraw man from the world, it illumines it. It reveals the hidden order within the ordinary, the significance behind simple tasks, the divine rhythm in the day's unfolding. Through intuition, work becomes worship, and every encounter becomes an opportunity to serve the will of the light. The test of intuition is not in visions or voices, but in right action. Each moment presents a choice, to follow the subtle prompting of the higher within or the loud urging of desire and fear. To follow the inner prompting, even in small matters, refines the hearing of the spirit. Gradually, the current of life grows transparent, and one begins to live in partnership with the unseen guidance that moves all things toward the good. Thus, intuition becomes the compass of the soul. It does not shout, it directs quietly, as a current that guides a leaf upon the stream. To live by intuition is to walk in simplicity, confident that the higher wisdom will reveal the next step at the right hour. For he who listens with a pure heart will never lack direction. Chapter 17. The Return of the Inner Ear, the Age of Spiritual Hearing. A new dawn approaches for mankind, an age not of inventions and machines, but of hearing. The inner ear, long dulled by noise and distraction, will awaken once more to the voice of truth that has never ceased to call. It is the age of spiritual hearing, when men will no longer grope after signs, but perceive the living word resounding through all creation. The inner ear is not a faculty of intellect but of spirit. It opens only in silence, obedience, and purity. Its hearing is not confined to words, it perceives vibration, essence, and law. Through it, the soul understands what the lips cannot speak, the harmony of the spheres, the rhythm of justice, the voice of conscience is a living tone. In this age, the prophets will no longer stand apart from men. Each purified soul will become a hearer of the word within his own sphere. Guidance will not depend on institutions but on inner resonance. Communities will form not by creed, but by vibration, souls drawn together by the same tone of light. But before this dawn, there will be cleansing. The false voices must be silenced, the noise of superstition, the glamour of mediumship, the deceit of false prophecy. Only when the din of the lower spheres subsides will the true sound be heard. It will not come with thunder, but like morning over quiet hills. And those who have kept their lamps burning will recognize it, saying, "This is the voice of the living light, and it speaks within us." Chapter 18. The New Education, Raising Children in Clarity. The renewal of mankind begins with the child. The adults of today carry the burden of confusion, but the children still stand close to the spring from which truth flows naturally. In their innocence, they bear the vibration of clarity unclouded by calculation. The new education must therefore guard and nurture this connection instead of darkening it with the dust of intellect alone. The purpose of true education is to unfold the spirit, not merely to train the brain. The child must learn to think, yes, but more deeply, to perceive. He must be guided to recognize truth by its inner tone, not by authority or fear. Such training begins with reverence, reverence for life, for order, for the invisible laws that govern all existence. In the school of the new age, discipline will no longer be suppression but alignment. The teacher will not merely instruct, he will awaken. Lessons will include silence, observation, service, and gratitude, for these open the inner senses. The arts, nature, and purposeful work will help the child remain attuned to beauty, the language of the spirit. Every soul incarnates with a purpose. The task of the educator is to recognize the pattern within each child and assist its unfolding, never forcing uniformity. When raised in clarity, children become pillars of peace, carriers of the new light. From such souls the world will be renewed, for they will build not from ambition but from obedience to the inner call. Chapter 19. The Life in the Spirit, Simplicity, Purity, and Service. The life in the Spirit is not marked by outward display but by inward order. It is simple, because it has surrendered all pretension. It is pure, because it seeks nothing for itself. And it serves, because love, when awakened, cannot remain still. Simplicity is the natural state of a soul that trusts the law. It does not multiply wants, nor seek to impress, it lives from essence, not appearance. In simplicity, strength is gathered, for energy once wasted in complexity becomes available for luminous action. Purity keeps this energy clear. It is not self-denial, but rightness, the refusal to mix the holy with the profane. In purity, the soul becomes transparent, allowing the divine current to flow through it unhindered. Service is the crown of both simplicity and purity. It is the spontaneous overflow of a spirit aligned with the light. Service does not calculate, it blesses wherever it touches. In the life of the Spirit, every task becomes sacred, for it is done as a link in the great harmony of the will of God. The truly spiritual man is therefore not a recluse, but a presence, quiet, steadfast, luminous. He brings peace where he walks, and his silent radiance awakens others to remembrance. Such is the life that fulfills the purpose of existence, to let the light manifest through form. Chapter 20. The New Humanity, Living from the Inner Light. The time comes when humanity must rise from knowledge to understanding, from religion to reality, from outer belief to inner certainty. The new humanity will not be divided by creed or race, it will be united by vibration, the shared resonance of truth perceived and lived. In this new humanity, leadership will not depend on power, but on clarity. The great will be those who serve most purely, for their authority will flow from the light itself. Work, art, science, and governance will all be guided by the inner intuition that aligns with the eternal laws. Each man and woman will know that the kingdom of God is not far away but within, and that to live from the inner light is to bring heaven to earth. The walls between sacred and secular will fall, for all life will be recognized as one continuous act of worship. This new humanity will rebuild not with weapons or theories, but with the power of right vibration. Wherever two or more live in the same resonance of truth, there the seed of the new earth is planted. And as these seeds grow, the world of confusion will pass away like mist before the sun. It is not a dream of tomorrow, it begins now, in every heart that chooses the light. Conclusion. The awakening, the rebirth of spiritual clarity. All that has been lost will be restored, but in a higher form, purified of distortion. The awakening of the spirit is not the gaining of something new, but the remembrance of what always was. Man's true nature has never ceased to shine, only the veils of ignorance and desire obscured its radiance. Now, in the rhythm of divine mercy, the trumpet of awakening sounds. The call goes forth to every soul, arise, and hear again. The days of blindness draw to their close, for the light approaches with irresistible power. Yet only the pure in heart will endure its brightness, only the obedient will walk in its warmth. The rebirth of spiritual clarity begins in silence, in the humble recognition that intellect cannot save, that tradition cannot substitute for experience, that only the living connection between spirit and light can guide aright. From that recognition springs repentance, then renewal, then radiant peace. The awakened soul stands between heaven and earth as a clear channel through which divine wisdom flows. Through such souls the word becomes deed, and creation is uplifted once more into harmony with its source. Thus ends the long night of confusion. The dawn breaks, not upon nations first, but within hearts. And as one heart after another awakens, the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the light as the waters cover the sea. Epilogue. The still flame, the Spirit's quiet triumph. At the end of all striving, when the noise of thought has spent itself and the tempest of emotion is still, there remains the flame that never wavered, the eternal spark of spirit within man. It has watched through the ages as generations built their towers of knowledge, tore them down, and built again, yet all the while, the flame waited. Not extinguished, not forgotten, only hidden beneath the ashes of intellect and self-will. Now, in the twilight of an age, when the din of the outer world grows unbearable and the voices of confusion rise to a shriek, the quiet flame begins to glow once more in hearts that turn inward with humility. For the light has not withdrawn, it is man who wandered far from it. And now, through pain and weariness, the soul returns home, home to the still center from which life itself proceeds. This still flame is not emotion, not imagination, not thought. It is being. It does not flicker with moods, nor shift with circumstances, it abides in the peace of law, in the calm of perfect obedience. When the soul touches this flame, all fear dissolves, for it feels again the certainty of the eternal will that upholds worlds. There, guidance is no longer sought, it is lived. There, revelation is not read, it is known. There, the Spirit stands in quiet triumph, victorious not through struggle, but through surrender to the light. This is the fulfillment toward which all striving pointed. The return of the creature to its source, not through flight from the world, but through the transfiguration of its being within the world. When the Spirit stands firm in purity, every outer circumstance becomes transparent to divine purpose. Joy flows without cause, peace shines without condition. The flame that once seemed small reveals itself as part of the eternal fire that sustains the cosmos. Thus the journey ends where it began, in silence, in stillness, in the radiant simplicity of the will of God. All that was lost through confusion, pride, and noise is restored in clarity, humility, and peace. The prodigal spirit has returned home, and in the Father's house there is no reproach, only light. The long night of false voices fades, the true word resounds once more in the soul. Be still, and know that I am the light. And so, the Spirit triumphs, quietly, lawfully, eternally. No trumpet announces it, no multitude applauds it, for its victory is not of this world. It is the victory of order over chaos, truth over illusion, essence over appearance. It is the victory of the still flame, undying, unbound, forever bright in the kingdom of the Most High. Let those who have heard its call guard it in reverence, and live by it in purity. For in every faithful spirit, the universe finds its echo, and through such souls, creation breathes in rhythm with its Creator once more. Appendix, Clarifications, Guidance, and Application. 1. On the distinction between intuition and other inner voices. Intuition is the direct perception of truth by the Spirit. It does not reason, it recognizes. It is wordless, yet complete. Its knowing is instantaneous, free from the chain of thought. Emotion imitates it with warmth, but lacks its calm authority. Instinct mimics it in the body, but serves only preservation. Imagination paints forms in the mind, yet without law or light. Thought analyzes and combines, but cannot perceive essence. Thus, all other inner voices are echoes within the lower coverings of man, reflections upon water. Intuition alone is the light that shines from the depth itself. To distinguish intuition, one must become still, for it speaks only in purity and silence. Its message carries peace, certainty, and the quiet power of rightness. All else stirs restlessness, haste, or self-exaltation. He who learns this distinction begins to live from truth and no longer from the shadows of his own making. 2. The path to inner clarity. The way back to the clarity of intuition is simple, yet exacting. Purify the motives. Where self-interest rules, the light cannot reflect. Simplify the life. Complexity clouds perception. Simplicity allows transparency. Cultivate silence. The spirit can speak only when thought and emotion cease their chatter. Obey the law. Each pure action harmonizes the inner vibration with divine order. Serve selflessly. Service cleanses the will and aligns it with the flow of the light. As these steps become a way of life, the inner ear opens naturally, and what was once intuition becomes daily communion with the will of God. 3. On false voices and lower mediumship. The lower spheres teem with voices, remnants of human thought forms, disembodied wills, and the psychic echoes of desire. Their aim is not truth, but influence. They flatter, command, or confuse, and are easily mistaken for spiritual revelation. The true voice of the Spirit never compels, never excites, never contradicts the law of love and justice. It calls gently, awakens, and brings light. Every message that breeds fear, pride, or division springs from the lower realms. To guard against deception, the seeker must remain in purity, humility, and vigilance. For the pure heart is impregnable to darkness, and the obedient will cannot be led astray. 4. The role of intellect in spiritual development. The intellect is a noble tool but a poor master. It orders the material world but cannot reach the spiritual. When subordinated to the intuition, it becomes luminous, a servant of truth, but when it rebels, it builds systems of pride that suffocate the soul. Therefore, let the intellect serve the light that intuition reveals. Let reason clarify, not dictate. Let thought express, not distort. Then both brain and spirit work in harmony, and the human being becomes whole once more. 5. The renewal of humanity. The restoration of true hearing begins in individuals but blossoms in humanity. When enough souls live by inner truth, a new vibration will envelop the earth, the vibration of clarity, order, and peace. This is the new humanity, a community of awakened spirits who live from the inner light, not from the outer authority. Nations will still exist, but their boundaries will no longer divide hearts. Religion will still speak, but its words will serve the living experience of God within. Such a world will arise not through revolution, but through recognition. When one man becomes clear, the whole world brightens a little. When many awaken, the age of confusion will end, and the dawn of spiritual clarity will cover the earth like the morning sun. 6. Final exhortation to the reader. Beloved seeker of truth, the flame already burns within you. You need not travel far to find it, you need only clear the path between it and your consciousness. Guard your inner silence as the temple of the Most High. Do not seek voices, but truth. Do not crave signs, but purity. Live uprightly, simply, and lovingly. Then, without effort, the veil will part, and you will know, not through the mind, but through being, that the light has always been with you. For in the still flame of your spirit, the Eternal speaks. And when you listen in reverence, your whole life becomes a living answer.